Lately, I feel that I've been doing a lot of content talking about why it's stupid to not want to support Biden in this coming election. Why, if you're a lefty, or even just somebody who gives a shit about our democracy staying intact as well as your rights staying intact, you should really care about trying to prevent Trump. At the very least, prevent Trump from getting elected, even if you don't necessarily support Biden. But all the while, even though I think I do a pretty good job of making arguments for why you should actually be a little bit excited to vote for Biden, even if he is just the not awful option for you, I feel I haven't dedicated enough content to really talking about the great things Biden is doing. And this is a very recent example of something that I'm going to imagine many of you probably haven't even heard about, because the places where many of you probably get your news information, it's probably quite filtered, and you're not going to be getting a lot of info on, here's the great stuff the Democrats are doing. But you might have even heard lefties say Biden hasn't done this. Now, this is something that Biden has done under the nose of the Supreme Court, and he's done this before, and he's going to continue to do so. One of his campaign promises was the full elimination of all student debt. Like canceling all student debt. And while that has to be done with approval of the Supreme Court to all be done at once, like unanimously across the board, the Supreme Court is a Trump-held Supreme Court. And so Biden is having to chunk away at people's student loans. And while he has already canceled billions of dollars of student loans already cumulatively, like in small amounts over time, he just did the biggest cancellation of student loans yet. This is just a few days ago. Statement from President Joe Biden on nearly $6 billion in student debt cancellation for 78,000 public service workers. This has already gone through, and this is just the most recent of the student debt cancellations he has done. And I know it's not enough, it's not everybody and all that, but God, that's a massive chunk. 78,000 people's student debt completely eliminated for a total of nearly $6 billion. Now, mind you, this isn't like a small amount of 78,000 people's student loans got, eliminated. It's all their student loans got eliminated. The people who've been talking on social media in particular about their student loans getting canceled by this have said that it's all of it. Like, they don't have to pay any student loans anymore. That's awesome. Today, my administration is canceling student loans for an additional 78,000 public service workers, teachers, nurses, firefighters, and more through public service loan forgiveness. These public service workers have dedicated their careers to serving their communities, but because of past administrative failures, never got the relief they were entitled to under the law. Because of the fixes my administration has made, we have now canceled student loan debt for over 870,000 public service workers as of now, compared to only about 7,000 service borrowers ever receiving forgiveness prior to my administration. And through all of our various student debt relief actions, nearly 4 million Americans have had their student debt canceled under my administration. 4 million Americans have benefited from Biden's student debt cancellation so far. Today's announcement comes on top of the significant progress we've achieved for students and student loan borrowers in the past few years. This includes providing the largest increases in Pell Grants in over a decade to help families who earn less than roughly $60,000 a year, fixing income-driven repayment plans so borrowers in repayment for years get the relief they earned, and creating the most generous income-driven repayment plan in history, the SAVE plan. Borrowers can go to studentaid.gov. Hey, chat. Here, I'm going to go ahead and drop this one for you guys in the chat if any of you are trying to get your student loans dealt with, I guess. Studentaid.gov, all one word. You know it's a safe link because it's got .gov at the end. It's run by our U.S. government. And in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision on my administration's original student debt relief plan, we are continuing to pursue an alternative path to deliver student debt relief to as many borrowers as possible as quickly as possible. From day one of my administration, I promised to fix broken student loan, from day negative one of his administration because it was one of his campaign promises. From day one of my administration, I promised to fix broken student loan programs and make sure higher education is a ticket to the middle class, not a barrier to opportunity. I won't back down from using every tool at my disposal to deliver student debt relief to more Americans and build an economy from the middle out and bottom up. Nice. Literally the opposite philosophy of like Bush's trickle-down economics idea. And, you know, every Republican before that had their own extremely destructive economic policy plans for how we're gonna make America the center of everything again. And, you know, for Trump, his version of like, let's destroy the economy with something I'm going to promise will fix it because I'm such a great businessman. For him, it's tariffs. And you know those like steel tariffs he did on China back in like, what, 2017, 2018? He plans to bring those back day one. Day one. This just means we're all going to be paying a whole lot more for a whole lot of shit. Cell phones, cars, tablets, computer parts, all that shit's gonna get more expensive after Trump puts those tariffs into place, if he gets elected. Very quickly. I love how, like, right now the left is foaming at the mouth to talk about how you're a bad lefty if you vote for Biden, or like you shouldn't push people to vote for Biden. And then they'll list a bunch of reasons, and oftentimes they'll include, also he's done nothing about student loans. Little problem with that is, yes, he has. Seriously, if you hear some like lefty account advocating for why you shouldn't vote for Biden and they make a claim, please fact check it. I promise you it'll be wrong. It might even be a blatant lie, opposite of the truth.
Happening today, President Biden is expected to announce that about 78,000 public service workers will have their student loans forgiven by his administration. The debt cancellations will bring his administration's total forgiveness to about $144 billion for nearly 4 million Americans.
$144 billion in student loan debt so far for 4 million Americans has been eliminated. So far. I need you guys to understand, anyone telling you that Biden isn't getting anything done, Biden isn't actually doing any policy or doing anything, they're just the kinds of people that don't pay attention to politics unless it's culture war shit. Reading about policy, keeping up with what kind of bills and executive orders are getting proposed, drafted, and passed, it's very boring work. I'm not going to deny that. You have to have kind of a little bit of a special autism to find it interesting, especially when you go through so many bills and stories where it's like, hey, here's a bill that will never pass 9 times out of 10, but then 1 time out of 10 it does pass, and it ends up being catastrophic. It's definitely not fun. But if you're going to be someone who goes out there and complains about like a sitting person in our government lying or making things up about what you think they've done, because you know the people who say Biden has done nothing just think Biden hasn't done anything, it's a vibes-based opinion. Anyone who's actually researched Biden's policy, if they're on the left, would immediately see that his actual performance as president has been better than any Republican or Democrat we've ever had. Biden is like way more progressive than Obama. Think about that for a second. Like Obama, who was touted and praised by the left because it's like, oh my God, America's first black president. This is a huge deal. I think a lot of people would almost assume, and on the left especially, that Obama was a more progressive policy-wise president than Biden. That's just not true. And it's not even true that Biden is just Obama too, because Biden has been distinctly left of Obama policy-wise. The Overton window may have moved to the left a bit in the country. That could explain some of it. But Biden's policies and the things he is fighting for are just more progressive than Obama. and more progressive, certainly, than Clinton or any Democrat before.
Biden says he won't back down from using every tool at his disposal to deliver student.
Wait, what is this news story that's in the headline? Like, U.S. and World News from ABC Chicago. What is this first story that comes up? What is their most recent U.S. and World News story? What? Uh-huh. Okay.
Student debt relief to more Americans. The student loan forgiveness brings the administration's total cancellations for public service workers to 870,000. Last month, Biden.
So you have to remember, though, he can't just axe all student debt with a swift, swing of a sword, because the Supreme Court is a Trump Supreme Court. Trump was president for 4 years, and the Supreme Court has a lot of power because of that on the Republican side. And there's no one doing that. That's what one Trump presidency gets you. Let's see what a second one does, you non-voting lefty dumb fucks. I'm not talking to you guys if you're going to vote, by the way. I'm talking to the dumb fucks. You know, the ones that probably aren't even watching and probably stopped watching about 11 minutes and 15 seconds ago and left a hate comment.
Biden's administration started sending emails to borrowers who are getting the loan forgiveness. Happening today, President Biden is expected to announce that about 78.
It looped. It looped. It looped. Do we have any post the announcement stories? Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. CBS News. Yay. CBS Morning News. You got us. I want to hear one from Post, the cancellation of the debt. Maybe they've got somebody whose debt got canceled that they brought on who's just like, yeah, yes, 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 yes. And that's just all he has to say. They just bring a guy on. What do you have to say about Biden canceling all your student debt? And it's just him trashing his room, ripping his shirt off, swinging it like Muscle Man in regular show, just screaming in excitement at the top of his lungs. And they cut away from him and just say, so yeah, people are, those affected by this student debt cancellation seem quite happy with the decision. That would go hard as fuck. Zan, you scared me? Good. You gotta stay on your toes when you're watching my stream. You can't just lay back and assume I'm not gonna scream into my microphone and scare the fuck out of you. That's what you should be sure will happen at some point in this. If chat gets too quiet, I'm gonna yell. I'm gonna make chat react. Getting too quiet. Gotta blow out your eardrums.
Just in from Washington this morning, the Biden administration has announced a new wave of forgiveness for student loans, totaling nearly $6 billion in student debt. So I know what you want to know.
Woo! Yeah, baby! This is what we've been waiting for!
Oh, who's going to qualify for this? Let's bring in Ed O'Keefe. He's standing by at the White House with the deets. You know what that means, right? It's the details. It's short form. It's how the kids talk.
You really tapped into the youth there, CBS Morning News. We just watched a live Pokemon Go to the polls moment. What the fuck? Dude, legacy media is so cooked. I really hate this alt media internet new age, even though I'm kind of part of it to a degree. But man, there does need to be reasonable voices in alt media because it's not going anywhere as long as the traditional media is like this. I clicked on the first mainstream video story about this, and we got a hello fellow kids moment that actively made a shiver go up my spine in the first 20 seconds of the video. Let's see the like-dislike ratio on this. 45,000 views, 800 likes. Oh boy. Automotive technician here, still paying student loans. He has nothing to do with this. Why is he taking claim of an existing option? It's an executive order. Yes, he did. That's how an executive order works. So yeah, most of the comments are literally just people making shit up. Xanderhall, you are an alt media journalist. I would not call myself a journalist or anything else than pre-Elon Twitter blue check mark. No, that's yeah. Do they hate the cringe or just hate students not being broke? A lot of it is the fact that this media itself is inherently cringe, but on top of that, you guys will just notice that the right wing online has so much more steam than the left does, fundamentally. Hypers in chat, if you didn't know, Bernie recently started a podcast. And if I want you to guess what the leading progressive candidate who ran for president twice on the Democratic side, who is like a known household name, how many views do you want to bet his podcast gets? He did? A what? He started a podcast? I didn't know he started a podcast. A lot of people saying that in chat. Yeah, that just gives you like a little bit of like a perspective into how like not online and not tapped in to like supporting figures on the left in this space people are. I can't even load YouTube right now. It won't let me load it. Bernie Sanders' new podcast episode from like a week ago has less than 10,000 views last I checked. He's put out an episode 2. It has well under 10,000 views. But it's more recent, so I'll be a little more charitable. And that's not me dunking on Bernie or whatever. Like, whatever. But it's very clear that the algorithms, at the very least, or just people generally on the left, they just aren't out there supporting, like, content creators making lefty content. And this isn't like a woe is me or like a shame on you lefties thing. It's just more of like a objective sort of observation. And so when you look at right-wing content creators and you see them like these dime a dozen grifters making millions, starting companies and farming millions of subs, it's not really that much of a wonder why that happens when Bernie Sanders starts a podcast and can't break 20,000 views on an episode in a week on his official, like, you know, what's it called? Verified YouTube channel. My videos, some of my really poorly performing videos are getting more views than his podcast episodes. Now, on one hand, this means Xander Hall for Bernie Sanders podcast. It's going to happen. I'm going to go on there. I will speak to Bernie. I'm going to ask him if he'll play Helldivers with me. I'm going to see if I can make it happen, guys. If we can get Bernie Sanders on Helldivers too, fuck, man, we'll be cooking. If we can get Bernie to play Minecraft, dude, holy shit. I'm going to get Bernie to play Minecraft with me. It's going to happen. All right. I'd watch that episode based. Xander Hall, AOC, Hassan arc. Just tell him Helldivers is about democracy. Well, I'm going to tell him that democracy needs his help. And that if we're going to protect our democracy, then we have to stop the encroaching fascists who want to destroy it. And, you know, I'm going to show him the trailer. It's going to hype him up, and he's going to be like, all right, Xander Hall, I really want to play this Helldivers 2 game. I want to kill all those bugs. They hate democracy. They hate freedom. They hate America. They have to be stopped. Can we watch part of a Bernie podcast? You guys want to? Well, no, we're not going to watch part of the Bernie podcast, but I think it's just worth pointing that out. But it's also like, honestly, the Bernie Sanders podcast being like a sub 10,000 view series on YouTube per episode kind of gives some perspective into like why so many on the left don't even know about this Biden student debt forgiveness. Because I guarantee unless I title this video, maybe I'll title this video something like really, really like technically related to the topic, but vague and like clickbaity. So it gets a lot of people watching it, because otherwise super hardcore political topics like this will only get clicked on by people who already care enough to know about it, right? I've had to trick my fans into learning about real politics before. And so I feel like that's a case where, like, a lot of these bills and stories are going to be a case where I have to do that, where I have to convince people to click on the video where they're going to be jump scared with the knowledge that Biden is in fact based and doing based things. Because it's just, you know, a Biden praise video, even on my channel, where people are generally more charitable towards Biden, not going to do that well compared to a video that's like, oh, I think I'll title it something like, "This is amazing," or something like that in all caps, you know? Just really vague, but clickbaity.
Ed, good morning.
This is how the kids talk, Anne Marie. Exactly. Good morning. Good to see you.
Oh, God,
Look,
it's not
this latest
over.
wave of forgiveness applies to public service workers, firefighters, nurses, teachers, and others who've been on the job 10 years or more. And it amounts, as you said, $6 billion in debt cancellation, all thanks to an existing federal program that had been little.
Yeah, title it like Biden just stole from 78,000 Americans, and the thing he stole is their student debt. Like, title it, Biden just stole from 78,000 Americans. They click on the video. Biden just canceled 78,000 Americans' student debt.
Used until the last few years, and in a sign of how the president is now trying to take a little more credit for this program in a tough election year, the White House says he'll be emailing another roughly 380,000 public service workers next week to let them know they're about 2 years away
Best Bernie impression? The American people are tired of women.
from being eligible for similar relief. Perhaps the subtle
love that
message
clip.
she's sending is that if
crowd
I get
cheering
reelected and
afterwards.
decide to go through with this. Remember, the Supreme Court last year rejected the president's original big student loan forgiveness program, and the Education Department is working on new rules for a broader forgiveness plan that would apply to more Americans.
Hey, you guys want to hear, like, the thing Trump wants to do? Like the Trump version of this policy? Instead of canceling your student loan debt, Trump swears and vows to defund entirely, federally defund every school that requires vaccines for their students. He promises that as day one policy. Full federal defunding of any school that mandates being vaccinated. For anything. Like measles, mumps, and rubella as well. We're already having several measles outbreaks across the country for the first time in decades. It's back. We made it extinct for 30 years in America, and the anti-vaxxers have brought it back. If Trump gets reelected, vaccines... I mean, banning vaccines is the next step. Like, once you start punishing institutions that require vaccines, the obvious next step is to ban them. They will literally make a political stunt out of biologically dooming millions of Americans to sickness and death. And they will make a lot of money doing it if Trump wins.
Tweaks to smaller existing loan forgiveness programs have helped the president.
Because you know what's going to happen, right? You know what conservatives these days say whenever a disaster occurs, even if it's their fault directly. There are two things they blame these days most commonly. If it was a death that occurred, it's the vaccine. It's the vaccine. It's always the vaccine. And if it's like a technical failure that occurred, it's DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is basically their stand-in for meaning like a brown person fucked up their job. And they were only given that job because they're brown, and this is what happens when you do diversity hiring. Mind you, they will never prove that diversity hiring or even a person who isn't white were involved with said problem. But yeah, like the bridge thing, they're already blaming DEI. I knew instantly. The second I saw it happen, I was there. The second I saw it happen, I knew. Yep, conservatives are going to blame this on DEI. They're going to blame this on DEI. They're going to find a way. Either it's going to be the power went out because it wasn't investigated well enough, the ship wasn't inspected well enough because of diversity hire workers. They're going to claim the crew were diversity hires. They're going to claim the construction team on the bridge were diversity hires, and that's why it did. Some way, somehow, they will blame this on DEI. And sure enough, within 12 hours of me thinking it, I woke up to see the right's reaction, and they already got the talking points, sort of laid out. The line was laid out and now being towed by everybody on Twitter. And, apparently it's... I believe the... We're obviously doing a segment about this later, but the conspiracy theory is fantastic. So the ship in question is of, like, Scandinavian make. It's either, like, Norway or Sweden, some, like, white-ass Europeans, like, Nordic country are the ones who made and operate or made the ship, and then it's operated out of like Singapore, I think. Maybe not Singapore, like it's somewhere in Southeast Asia, I believe. Maybe Australia, somewhere in that area, like the Southern Hemisphere, around the Pacific, like Australia, New Zealand, or somewhere in Southeast Asia, around there. I don't know why I'm remembering the region of the world and not like what country, but regardless. But the ship's name is the Dali, which sounds like, I guess to a conservative, they would immediately assume brown. That name sounds brown. That's just immediately what their mind would jump to. Yep, conspiracy bullshit, thank you. That's a good account that would be featuring the, According to Twitter, all of the following are responsible for the bridge. Wokeness, Ukraine, foreign aid, the CIA, the Jews, Russia, China, Iran, Biden, Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, P. Diddy, Nickelodeon, India, Obama, Islam, aliens, Sri Lanka, WEF, and the UN. The WEF is the World Economic Forum. Those are the New World Order Illuminati types that believe in like Freemason shit.